Creative frustration, boorish coworkers, and incredibly hurtful comments. It all adds up to Saturday Night Live being one of the worst jobs of these stars' careers. Before he was Saul Goodman, Bob Odenkirk began his career as an SNL staff writer from 1987 to 1991, occasionally making small appearances on camera. But he was young and not exactly full of confidence. As he admitted on the podcast Don't Ask Tig in 2023, "I was unsure of myself. It was hard. It was existentially dangerous. It's hard for kids to believe you when you say, I had no clue what I was doing and I was scared out of my wits for years." Odenkirk also developed what he believes was a defeating, self-righteous attitude. He particularly opposed one of the most famous SNL sketches of all time, in which Chris Farley auditioned for a spot in the Chippendales dance troupe alongside Patrick Swayze. As Odenkirk wrote in his autobiography, "Comedy, comedy, drama, drama." Writers I knew and respected defended this sketch because it had a funny-ish idea buried in it. The Chippendales judges prefer Swayze's dancing over Chris's, but can't put a finger on why. But that idea is not what produced the gales of cackling and gasps from the live audience. Chris flopping his overstuffed body around did that. During Barack Obama's presidency, SNL needed someone to play him on a regular basis, which was a big reason why Pharoah was hired in 2010. In addition to his Obama, Pharoah showcased uncanny impressions of Kanye West, Jay-Z, and Denzel Washington. After 7 years in the cast, NBC announced Pharoah's abrupt exit in the summer of 2016, implying that he left to seek bigger and better jobs. But half a year later, Pharoah clarified that SNL had fired him, following a prolonged period of him feeling like his skills weren't being fully utilized. As he explained on Hot 97's Ebro in the Morning, "You have multiple people on the cast saying things like, 'You're so talented and you're able, and they don't use you, and it's unfair and it's making us feel bad because they don't use you,' and you're like, 'You're a talent.'"
They put people into boxes and, whatever they want you to do, they expect you to do.
In addition to voicing multiple characters on The Simpsons and serving as a regular in Christopher Guest's mockumentary movies, Harry Shearer was also an SNL cast member, and he's one of the few people to perform on the show in 2 separate runs. He was initially hired in 1979 as a featured player for its 5th season before returning for its 10th season in 1984. But it wasn't exactly a pleasant environment. As he described his first stint to IGN in 2000, "Living hell. The way it was organized, the way people were treated, the approach to the material. It was about as far from pleasant as you can possibly get. It was extremely challenging." When Shearer returned in the fall of '84, he was joined by his This Is Spinal Tap co-star Christopher Guest. But as Shearer soon realized, "I thought things had changed, and found to my dismay that they hadn't." When SNL creator Lorne Michaels returned to the show in 1985 after 5 years away, one of his first new hires he made was Chicago Comedy Theater veteran Nora Dunn. She'd never appeared on screen before her SNL debut, but she quickly rose to the challenge and over the next 5 seasons became one of the show's most reliable utility stars. But Dunn's most famous moment at SNL was much more acrimonious. In 1990, she refused to appear in an episode hosted by stand-up comedian Andrew Dice Clay in protest of his boorish humor, which Dunn believed was misogynistic. That was certainly a rough moment, but the rest of Dunn's stint wasn't exactly a piece of cake either. As she told Salon in 2015, "SNL is a traumatic experience. It's kind of something you have to survive, and you really have to learn. I made a lot of mistakes."
So here you have this dysfunctional family with a house guest pretending that everything is so great.
Jay Mohr joined SNL as both a writer and featured player in the fall of 1993. At the time, the show had 16 cast members, and Mohr had a tough time getting himself on the air. He was beset by so much workplace anxiety that he feared he would lose the job that was supposed to be his big break. His solution? He ended up stealing a bit from another comedian. As he admitted in his memoir, Gasping for Airtime, "I took Rick Shapiro's act and wrote it down word for word and submitted it as my sketch." The sketch, entitled O'Callahan and Son, made it into the March 18, 1995 episode hosted by Paul Reiser. Shapiro was a fairly prominent New York comedian at the time, and it didn't take long before Mohr's bosses at SNL figured out what he'd done. O'Callahan and Son was subsequently removed from reruns, and Mohr was fired at the end of the season. A leader of the 90s alternative comedy scene, Janeane Garofalo took a big step in her career in 1994 by joining the cast of SNL. The show was in flux at the time, dealing with a ratings shortfall and seeking a soft reboot by hiring well-known comedians like Garofalo. But before any of her episodes even aired, she publicly expressed her grievances with the show. In an interview with the New York Observer, she called the previous season unwatchable. She also singled out her new castmate Adam Sandler, calling his characters childish. In a March 1995 feature story for New York Magazine detailing the backstage drama at SNL, Garofalo said that working at the show was, quote, the most miserable experience of my life. She turned to cigarettes and vodka to cope. She was also fed up with Sandler and other cast members' insistence on making fun of gay people. As she put it, they love the anal sex here. That's considered incredibly funny.
I have anal warts.
It wasn't long before Garofalo had had enough, as she quit after 14 episodes. It can take a while for a new SNL cast member to make a big impact on the show, but Jenny Slate accomplished that on her very first episode, just not for the reason she hoped for. During the season 35 premiere in September 2009, Slate appeared in a sketch called Biker Chick Chat. It featured salty motorcycle enthusiasts who liberally peppered their speech with profanity, except that since this was airing on network TV, they had to say frickin' instead of anything more explicit. Slate accidentally dropped an F-bomb, realized her own mistake, and then visibly sighed. But she wasn't fired, at least not right away. Slate rode out the rest of the season, appearing in sketches from time to time, but never enjoying a real breakout moment. When the season ended, she wasn't offered a chance to return for another year, which led to widespread speculation that the F-word incident led to her dismissal. But as she told InStyle in 2019, everyone always thinks I got fired for saying I didn't. That's not why I got fired. I just didn't belong there. I didn't do a good job. I didn't click. I have no idea how Lorne Michaels felt about me. All I know is it didn't work for me and I got fired.
I was not suited to the environment. I didn't like it. I was really uncomfortable.
Casey Wilson joined SNL in January 2008, but she wasn't utilized very often over her 1.5 years on the show. She was usually cast in sketches for her vague physical resemblance to various celebrities, but she was also haunted by body image issues during her tenure. After multiple agents urged Wilson to lose weight, she did so and secured both the SNL gig and a role in the movie Julie and Julia on the same day. But as she wrote in her book, The Wreckage of My Presence, I'm not sure I would have gotten them if I hadn't lost the weight. In addition to the stress of SNL and the comments about her body, Wilson was also grieving the death of her mother. To cope, she overate and regained the weight that she'd lost. She wasn't asked back to the show for a third season. As she admitted, I felt a rush of relief and utter disappointment in myself. I had the chance and I didn't take my shot, but I never cried. The relief outweighed the regret. It eventually came out that Wilson was indeed fired because of her weight. She wrote, "That was the night I cried. I wailed. I've never been more humiliated or felt more exposed."
It was great, but it was hard.
Well before his career-defining stints on Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry David was hired as a writer for SNL in 1984. But as the weeks wore on, he grew increasingly frustrated by his inability to get any of his ideas onto the show, even though his sketches were well received at the read-throughs.
And then they would invariably get cut, like week after week after week.
The last straw came when one of David's sketches was cut by producer Dick Ebersol 5 minutes before airtime.
I watched over to him, I said, "This show stinks! It stinks! I'm done!"
As David walked home, he realized that he'd just left a well-paying job and also violated his contract with NBC. His neighbor advised him to go back to work on Monday and pretend like he'd never quit. The gambit worked. Nobody wanted to call him out, and a couple of weeks later, he got his one and only sketch on the air. A bit about an architect who wants to build a stool into an elevator so that the operator has a spot to relax. That concept later inspired the plot of a Seinfeld episode, as did David's experience of quitting and pretending like it never happened.
Just go back. Pretend the whole thing never happened.
Never happened.
I was blowing off a little steam, so what?
After performing for years with the influential Los Angeles comedy troupe The Groundlings, Michaela Watkins got the call to join SNL in 2008. As that was an election year, she ended up most frequently making appearances as TV journalists like Barbara Walters and Ariana Huffington. She spent the season as a featured player, but wasn't asked back to return the following year. Despite her background in producing comedy on a tight timeline, Watkins had a hard time getting started at SNL, although she felt that she was starting to find her footing. As she told The Daily Beast in 2020, "I feel like it was a marathon, but the week I got there, they cut my Achilles. They're like, okay, start running. I don't feel like I came into a soft landing at all. I thought we were all having a good time, but then they didn't renew my contract the next year. Maybe I was delusional. I really wanted to go back. I would have been really happy if they'd had me for 3 seasons. Zach Galifiankis made his SNL debut as a host in March 2010, elevated to mainstream success by the blockbuster comedy The Hangover, but he had history with the show. After auditioning as a performer in 1999, he received a job offer to join the show near the end of the 1999 to 2000 season. When he reported to work, he discovered that he hadn't actually been hired as a cast member, but instead as writer on a probationary basis. Galifiankis wrote one piece in which Will Ferrell played the bodyguard of guest host Britney Spears' belly button, but it bombed at the table read.
I remember it was so silent. I remember hearing the AC it shut down during the middle of the sketch.
That sketch didn't make it to air, and neither did anything else Galifiankis wrote. After just 2 weeks, he was let go.